Hello, folks, and welcome to part two of Y-DNA and the Joyce family. In this particular section of this series, we will explain why contrasting and comparing the Y-DNA evidence against the traditional documentation is crucial to understanding the early origins of Thomas Joass, born 1609, 1665. This is important because it is only through this methodology that one can find a common ancestry for the Joyces of Northern Ireland and the Joass family of Scotland. But before we can learn about Thomas Joass and his importance as concerns the Joyce family, we must first learn about who he was. He was the original forebearer of the Joyce family of Banffshire, Scotland, and the Joyces of Northern Ireland. And it is only by correlating the Y-DNA evidence and traditional documentation that one is better able to understand how Joss and Joyce are related to each other. However, due to the complicated nature of interpreting Y-DNA evidence, this presentation is designed to simplify these results for the general audience. As was illustrated by part one of Y-DNA and the Joyce of family, SNPs within the male lineage of a family have formed a crucial part of constructing the early origins of the Joyce family tree. To be more specific in this presentation, a family tree gives an estimate of when each new SNP is born in a Joyce male. However, these are only close estimates, and to find the exact date a new SNP was born in the Joyce male, one has to compare the traditional evidence against the Y-DNA evidence. This can easily be started by constructing a skeleton SNP family tree based on the order of the SNPs and when they were estimated to have born into existence. You start with what you know. If the traditional documentation is sound, and if the age of the SNPs lines up with the birth dates of specific Joyce ancestors, then there is an agreement with both the Y-DNA documentation and the traditional documentation. And as equally important and crucial, if all the birth dates of all the ancestors in each line approximately line up with each other, this shows another agreement with the Y-DNA evidence and traditional documentation. This complex methodology is best explained in this SNP family tree. Family tree DNA, or shortened to FTDNA, has estimated RY11201 to have been born about the year 1600 CE. This lines up with the birth date of Thomas Joass, born 1609. For Alexander Joyce, who was born with RFTB 42619, his SNP was estimated to have been born about 1700 CE. For Samuel Joyce, who was born with RFTB 53897, his SNP was estimated to have been born about 1750 CE. Likewise, on the other side of the Joyce family tree, RY43252, which was born with a William Joyce, born 1663. This SNP has been estimated to have been born about the year 1700. For George Joyce, born 1727, his SNP, RFTD 34424, was estimated to have been born about the year 1730 CE. And George Joyce, born 1767, his SNP, RFTA 92314, was estimated to have been born about the year 1800 CE. For those unaccustomed to Y-DNA and genealogy as a whole, they may be confused or curious on how accurate these SNPs are. The answer to this inquiry is easier than you think. Simply put, there are 4 ways this can be simplified. The more Y-DNA matches that have tested for confirmed SNPs through the Big Y 700 test at Family Tree DNA, the more accurate the age estimates are for the SNPs. This can easily be seen by constructing a SNP family tree that aligns the Y-DNA kits, the number of Y-DNA kits, per their assigned SNPs. Because family tree DNA only requires 2 Big Y 700 test results to discover new SNPs and their age estimates, this event updates and refines the whole Joyce family tree and the age estimates. In other words, they are improved. Because the Joyce family has 19 Y-DNA kits that have taken the Big Y 700 test, the age estimates are pretty accurate. This can be easily seen by the fact that there are 19 Y-DNA matches descended from Thomas Joass, born 1609, that have tested and have been confirmed as inheriting RY11201. Now fast forward 4 generations to Alexander Joyce, born 1720, and 4 of his descendants have tested. His nephew, Samuel Joyce, has 2 male descendants that have tested. Go to the other side of the family tree, and you will see there are 4 Y-DNA matches that are descended from from William Joyce, born 1663. Go forward a few generations. You will see that George Joyce, born 1727, has two descendants that have tested. And George Joyce, born 1767, has two male descendants that have tested. All of this evidence, when combined together, has refined the age estimates considerably. For the Joyces of about an inch, a county down, this alignment of traditional and Y-DNA evidence has proved critical for connecting their line to Scotland. Inheriting RY11201 from Thomas Joass, born 1609, they descend more recently from William Joyce, born 1632. By the same token, they match Y-DNA relatives that are descended from the brother of William Joyce, James Joyce, born 1643. These distant relatives descend from the Joyce family of Gamry, Banffshire. For the Joyce family of Ballydunny, County Armagh, this alignment of evidence has also proven very important to connecting them to Scotland. As previously noted in the last slide, the Joyce family of Ballyhinch, County Down, they descend from Thomas Joass through one of his sons, like William Joyce, born 1632. For the Joyce family of Ballydunny, County Armagh, they descend through another son of Thomas Joass, James Joyce, born 1643. They also match, in terms of Y-DNA, the Joyce family of Gamry, Banffshire. This process of correlating the Y-DNA evidence and traditional can be complex, but it can be easily simplified in this following graph. Step 1. Construct a skeleton family tree based on the SNPs and their estimates. Start with what you know. Step 2. Experiment by trying to align the Y-DNA evidence with the traditional evidence. See what works and what doesn't. Step 3. Fill in the gaps of the skeleton family tree based on traditional documentation. During this phase, you should have a fairly stable idea of what will work and what doesn't. Step 4. Review the completed family tree and see if it makes sense in terms of alignment. If the estimated SNP dates and birth dates of the assigned ancestors aligns, then there is an agreement between both of genetic and traditional evidence. If the traditional documentation is sound, and if it aligns with the genetic evidence, then there is an agreement with both forms of evidence. And finally, test if the placement of the family tree branches and the birth dates of ancestors in both branches align approximately. If they do, then you have another agreement with both y-DNA and traditional documentation. In conclusion, to understand the Joyce family, and in particular how the Joyces and Joyces are connected, one needs to at least understand the y-DNA evidence. And by understanding the y-DNA evidence, then one sees the need to align it with the traditional documentation to paint a fuller and clearer picture of the family. This comparing and contrasting then provides a much stronger rationale for identifying Thomas Joass, born 1609, as a principal Joyce forebearer. And ultimately, when one does take into account both y-DNA and traditional evidence, the conclusion is much stronger and much more reliable.